Now let's turn to the story that's gripping America, the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC Today show host Savannah Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home in Arizona 9 days ago. Authorities believe that she was taken against her will. Savannah Guthrie has issued another desperate plea for help.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. No matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement.
Joining us for more on this is our panel, Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, and Alex Tarasio, Signal Principal and Pollster. Thank you both for joining us. Of course, our thoughts and prayers are with Savannah. All of the Guthries are praying that Savannah's mother is found and that she's in okay condition. But Josh, authorities are really racing against the clock here.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. And look, we obviously are all praying. We are hoping for the best. But look, I mean, happy endings at this point in the story oftentimes only happen in Hollywood, right? And again, we're all hoping and praying for the best news here, but it's entirely possible this is not going to end the way that Americans and the rest of the world, for that matter, really hope that it is going to end. Now, the one thing, Gabrielle, that I will say has been kind of my takeaway throughout this really just deeply terrible story is it's been amazing to watch Americans of all stripes unite around this. And I say that because the timing of that is quite interesting, actually. We just had this highly divisive Super Bowl halftime show, Bad Bunny, the very anti-Trump Spanish-speaking musician who really alienated a lot of people there, the NFL and Roger Goodell, the commissioner, and him there. We have American athletes overseas in Italy and Milan Cortina as part of our Olympic delegation right now at the Winter Olympic Games, who are trashing the administration there. So America's actually very divided in many ways when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to sports, things like that. To say nothing of Donald Trump and immigration, of course, themselves. But the country's really been able to unite and rally around this particular story. It's something of a sordid reminder that all too often it takes deep, profound human tragedy in order to make Americans unite around something, or frankly, just all human beings that matters. It's been very much a recurring theme throughout human history. So maybe I'm naive, Gabriella, but my hope is that perhaps we can learn a thing or two from this and be a little more ready, willing, able, perhaps even eager to make common cause and unite when there's something less tragic happening in the future.
Alex, are you seeing that as well? Really, the country united over this, all hoping for the best outcome?
I think that the country is united in horror of this. It's such a strange story, and kidnappings don't happen all that often. They're unusual in the United States. Ransoms don't happen all that often. And so when it happens to somebody who's such a high-profile figure that people know, they're in their homes every night. There's millions of people for whom this is like it happening to their friend. And there is a great deal of interest in this, a great deal of hope that Nancy Guthrie is returned alive and intact. And so I see Donald Trump, uncharacteristically coming in and offering only support, only help, only resources, nothing else. That's exactly what people want to see from a president. But this really isn't about him. This is about a moment of grief and something that we hope never happens to anybody. But it's also the kind of thing that freaks people out and gets people to be more scared. And so I do hope she comes home. Hopefully we can have a happy ending on this one.
Let's talk about the economy. A new Gallup poll found that more Americans believe the economy and stock market will improve over the next 6 months. This poll found that 50% say that the stock market will be going up, 25% expect it to fall, 17% think that it will stay the same. On economic growth, 49% expect an increase, 36% predict a decline. Alex, what do you make of this poll? What do you put this down to?
So this is one of several poll results that say kind of the same thing that I have noted over the past week and a half, 2 weeks. They all ask slightly different questions because the economy is irredeemably politicized. And when you ask people if they approve of the economy, then that tracks really tightly with their approval of the president. And so where you can see improvements is where you have a trend. And this was one of those polls where you have a trend in more people saying now compared to a few months ago that the economy is improving or that they expect things to get better. They expect their own situation to improve. We have seen that in our own polling at Signal. I've seen that in several other sources. And so what that tells me is that the affordability messaging that the White House is doing is, I think, working. The plans that the White House has put into place through the One Big Beautiful Bill and through the entire economic plan that he has instituted since coming in, I think it is starting to work, and that Americans are starting to feel it. It happens slowly. The economy is like an aircraft carrier. It takes a really long time to turn, but the momentum is definitely in the right direction, just based on the number of signals that are moving the right way.
Yeah, Josh, what do you make of this? I think it certainly shows confidence, but is that going to be enough to help Republicans in the midterms?
So, Gabrielle, this is a huge switch actually from as recently as 2 months ago. So Alex, not me, is the polling guru here on this panel. But if memory serves, it was early December that I saw a poll from a group that I never heard of called American Research Group. I don't really know how reputable they are. I've never heard of them. But I remember seeing this poll, and it was basically an "Are you better off or are you worse off than 1 year ago?" style question. And according to that poll, about 2 months ago, early December, 65% of Americans said that they were worse off financially than 1 year ago. Only 7% actually said that they were better off. And then there was a healthy chunk that said that there was no discernible difference there. Now, admittedly, that poll is talking about the past. This is a prospective poll talking about the future. But still, I mean, pessimism versus optimism, that's a really, really big switch. And these are just one polls there. But as Alex says, it actually is part of a broader trend. So I agree that what the White House is saying right now and how they're messaging, it seems to be working, and I can't necessarily pinpoint one thing, right? I can't necessarily say that this was the sent testimony from Secretary Scott Bessent that necessarily overcame the mainstream media disinformation hoax, or this was the statement, or this was the data there. I think it's kind of just the death by 1,000 cuts of really what has been this corporate media disinformation hoax. I mean, the notion that affordability has been a grave, grave crisis in the Trump administration, especially relative to the baseline of the Biden economy that he inherited, is frankly, it's a farcical notion. I mean, gas prices are at least 5-year lows. Oftentimes, in some states, are actually even lower than that. 4.4% is the most recent quarterly GDP number that we have. Inflation overall hovering around 2.6, 2.7%. That's still higher on a month-over-month basis than it should be. The Federal Reserve targets 2%, but it's manageable. It's not particularly crazy there. So whatever the administration is doing, again, I can't pinpoint to like one data point there, but the trend is definitely a positive direction. Right now, they kind of just need to keep it up, because if there is one thing that can stave off what still looks like a fairly daunting and intimidating midterm elections for the GOP this fall, it would be, I think, continued success on the economic front.
Let's talk about the Super Bowl. The halftime show is being slammed. A lot of people didn't want to see Bad Bunny, especially after his political grandstanding at the Grammys. And here's what WWE wrestler Logan Paul said when asked if he was excited about the show.
Logan, are you excited for the halftime show? No.
He was not the only one who didn't want to watch Bad Bunny's performance. Millions of people switched off and turned into Turning Point USA's Arrival show. Josh, this was no surprise to me.
Yeah, Gabrielle, I flipped back and forth a little bit. I ultimately ended up watching the Bad Bunny thing, and then ended up watching the Turning Point alternative show after it was over. I wanted to make sure I watched both. Frankly, I would have skipped the Bad Bunny thing, but I need to know, frankly, what was said for purposes of my day-to-day job, which is that of a political commentator. And it was an atrocity. I mean, it's really not performative outrage on my behalf and many others' behalf. I was really, really angry watching that, because this is the Super Bowl. This is America's #1 marquee sporting event. I'm a lifelong sports fan, Gabrielle. I almost work in professional sports. I love professional sports. The Super Bowl is it. I mean, it is the granddaddy of all American sporting events there. It is a global, iconic event there. Supposed to represent American athletic competition and American sporting excellence, American exceptionalism on the world stage there. And we couldn't even do it in our language, in the language that we speak. I mean, it was such a massive insult. It was a massive insult to large swaths, at least a plurality, probably a majority of the NFL's actual fan base there. And then to kind of add insult to injury, you had Green Day, which is a notoriously ideologically left-wing punk rock band whose heyday was like 2.5, 3 decades ago. They kicked off the festivities before it all started there. Then you had the Black National Anthem. I mean, what was this? I mean, why is there a Black National Anthem? Well, last I checked, the Star Spangled Banner was national anthem for all of us. So the whole thing, frankly, from soup to nuts, was just deeply alienating and discomforting. And look, I mean, I tuned in, as I said, to the Turning Point alternative event after it was over. I'm a big country music fan. I saw Lee Brice in concert actually for the first time like 12 or 13 years ago when he was a nobody. So it was fun to see him now playing in this alternative halftime show there. I enjoyed it. Hopefully the NFL learns from this. I suspect they probably won't, unfortunately, because Jay-Z is still calling the halftime shows. I think he's on a contract for a few more years. They probably won't learn anything whatsoever there, but it's hard to imagine it getting a lot worse than this.
It's extraordinary. I mean, even from where I'm sitting in Australia, tuning in to watch it, that's really not the classic Americana themes that you would expect to get from an NFL game. Alex, what were your thoughts watching it? And of course, I'm sure you're not surprised to see more than 5 million people turning into Turning Point USA's rival show.
I'm not surprised, and I think that Josh is probably a little more optimistic than I am about the NFL's likelihood of improving in the future. I was one of these people that turned off the halftime show. I didn't have any interest in seeing it, but I don't want to overstate that phenomenon. The Super Bowl, as Josh rightly noted, is far and away the most watched event in American life, and not just sporting event, just the most watched event. There's about 130 million people who probably tuned in last night, and that is on par for a non-sporting event, just for reference, with the moon landing in 1969. There's simply nothing else out there, not even close, that gets so many Americans all looking at the same thing at the same time. And so that's why I think the people get sick of having politics shoved in their face. You know, the three of us here on this panel are probably a little weird, but most people just want to tune out sometimes and just watch football. And to have these halftime shows, and it's not just this one, it's every year, focus on getting politics back in a place where it doesn't have to be, that is something people don't like. And we had a poll result that's going to come out in probably 2 days, where we asked, does the mainstream media reflect views of people like you? And 65% of Americans said no. And so last night, when they see something like that, that's what they're talking about. They want to watch the football, they want to watch game and fun commercials. They don't want to watch more politics.
No, absolutely not. Look, President Trump says that he wants to see America become more faithful than it has ever been before. Let's take a listen.
We are going to do something that everyone said, like, that's tough. We're going to rededicate America as one nation under God. You know, a lot of people...
You can hear that applause pretty loudly there. He says religion is essential for a great nation, noting the boost we've seen in church attendance, and he said that there has to be a reason for why we're here.
And I've always said, you just can't have a great country if you don't have religion. You have to believe in something. You have to believe that what we're doing, there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. We're all working and we're behaving. I mean, I behave because I'm afraid not to, okay? Because I don't want to get in trouble.
He makes everyone laugh, doesn't he? Alex, many signs at the moment that religion is really making a comeback. A lot of people returning to church, certainly after Charlie Kirk's death.
There are a lot of signs of that. And so for many years, religious attendance and identification with Americans being Christian primarily has been falling. That has recently started to reverse. And when I see something like this, I anticipate the reaction, the backlash, because that's what I grew up with 20 years ago. But we've had 20 years of going in the wrong direction, in the other direction, of getting religion more and more out of public life in every possible way. Meanwhile, we have this other civic religion, where on the Democratic side, during the Biden administration, we worship trans people. We make room for every other religion in society, but not what Trump said at that breakfast. I think it's great. I think that we need more of these things. There's a little bit more humility from the president, from the country. That can only be a good thing. And we're just a long way off from the country that we were even in the Bush years. And so it was rather refreshing to hear this.
Yeah, Josh, what are your thoughts on what the president had to say? And are you seeing that from where you are, more and more people heading back to church?
Yeah, this is a wonderful message from Donald Trump. This is very much sentiment that I've been preaching in my own capacity as an adult, as a commentator for literally decades now. Shades of George Washington's farewell address, actually. George Washington, in his farewell address in 1796, famously says, I'm paraphrasing here, it's a very close paraphrase, he says that there is nothing other than revealed religion itself, which is the indispensable safeguard of morality from one generation to the next. He's not talking here about this kind of ethereal, amorphous notion of spiritual but not religious. He's talking about actual, revealed, biblical religion. And that's what Donald Trump's talking about as well at this prayer breakfast there. Donald Trump has been the greatest friend in modern presidential history, arguably the greatest friend in all of American history, to people of faith there. He comes from a historically not particularly religious background. I don't pretend to know what his current worship habits are or whatever there, but he certainly says and does all of the right ththings when it comes to this matter. There absolutely has been a surge, to Alex's point, in Americans who are returning to their faith. There, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Look, it's the first liberty enshrined in the Bill of Rights. The very first two clauses of the very first round of the Constitution are the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, which are our two religious liberty provisions there. This is the bread and butter of what it means to be an American. We're coming up here this summer on the 250th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence there, really the symbolic beginnings of the country there. There certainly could be a worse time to recommit to our nation's founding principles than this. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I commend Donald Trump for saying and doing it.
I want to talk about The View before I let you both go. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has launched an investigation into the ABC's The View amid the agency's crackdown on equal time for political candidates. A source told Fox News Digital that the fake news is not getting a free pass anymore. Alex, I think the fake news is still getting a free pass when I look at a lot of what is still getting put out there on mainstream media. What do you make of this?
There are so many rules that the left doesn't think that it needs to follow. And I say the left and the media in this case in really one breath. The network news, like ABC, they have to abide by certain rules. Those rules are that you give candidates equal time. If you don't, then you're effectively allowing the use of government resources, the networks, to be used to advance one political candidate, and government should not do that. That tends to just get ignored so much of the time. And so we have an FCC that's not doing that, and they now need to give equal time, if depending on how this thing gets adjudicated, to the other contestants in that race. That includes another Democrat, by the way, and it includes the Republicans who are trying and vying for that seat as well. So this is the rules. If you believe that nobody is above the law, then neither is ABC. Nobody ultimately gets an advantage, but I would rather that ABC and all the other networks spend a little bit more time paying attention to being a little bit more neutral than they have been accustomed to.
Josh, are we really going to see that from The View? I mean, The View hosts being a little bit more neutral.
Probably not, but it is the law. I mean, this absolutely is the law. I mean, putting on my legal cap as a lawyer, I mean, Alex is totally right. I mean, the traditional actual networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, are held to a very different standard than, for instance, your online streaming company there. And if you don't like what the actual law is when it comes to the standards that we have in place, then your role as a concerned citizen is to lobby your lawmakers, or as the case may be here sometimes, your regulators, to actually change the law. But Brenton Carr, who is the chairman right now of the FCC, I've known Brendan Carr for some number of years now. He knows the law. He knows the rules, and he's looking to actually enforce the law and enforce the rules there. And kudos to him. But no, Gabriella, I do not expect the ladies of The View, to have on some young, ambitious Republican candidate from Texas or Kansas or whatever anytime soon. There, that will be quite a trip. But I don't want to say it coming up.
No, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy, all of them. It's that would be interesting to watch, wouldn't it? Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, and Alex Tarasio, Signal Principal and Pollster. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.